The lonely life, the city lights flickered in the distance as a cold wind blew through the empty streets. It was a quiet night, the kind where nothing seemed to matter. The tall buildings stretched into the sky, their neon signs casting an eerie glow over the broken streets below. The city was filled with life, but the girl walking alone on the sidewalk didn't feel any of it. Her name was Lira, an alien girl who had been abandoned by everyone. She had no home, no friends, and no family. Lira was a stranger in this world. She didn't belong here. Her long silver hair blew in the wind, and her glowing blue eyes reflected the dim lights from the city. She looked fragile, like she could disappear if the wind blew too hard. Her skin was pale, almost glowing in the darkness, as if it was made of something otherworldly. Lira had traveled to many places, each one colder than the last. She had been rejected over and over again, just because she wasn't human. No one understood her, no one cared. She had tried to fit in, but it never worked. She had a power inside her, something dangerous, and because of that, people feared her. They called her a monster, a threat to everything they held dear. Now, Lira wandered the streets of a city she didn't know, looking for a place to hide, a place to forget everything. The rain began to fall softly, but it didn't matter. She didn't feel the cold or the wetness. She was used to the pain. She passed by people who glanced at her, their eyes full of fear or curiosity, but no one stopped. No one cared. Lira felt invisible. She walked on, her footsteps echoing in the silence, her heart heavy with the weight of her loneliness as she walked. Lira's hand brushed against a small, glowing crystal she always carried with her. It was the only thing that made her feel connected to something. It had been with her since the day she was abandoned. It was her last link to the past, a reminder of the family she had lost, the life she could never have. The crystal gave off a faint, soft light, like it was trying to comfort her, but it couldn't fill the emptiness inside her. Lira's journey had taken her far. She had been to places where people tried to use her, places where she was chased. Away, she had been cast out by every planet she had visited, each one telling her she didn't belong. Each time, she had been left alone, wandering in the dark, trying to find her way. Tonight, however, there was something different about the city. Something in the air felt strange, like something was waiting for her. She didn't know what it was, but she couldn't ignore the feeling. It was like a voice was calling to her, telling her that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely alone. The sound of footsteps suddenly broke the silence, and Lira turned, startled. She wasn't expecting anyone, but there, walking toward her, was a man. He looked human, tall, and dressed in a dark coat, his face serious and unreadable. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Lira thought she saw something in his gaze, a hint of curiosity, maybe even sympathy. The man stopped a few steps away from her. He didn't say anything, but he didn't turn away either. Lira felt her heart race. Could he be different? Could he see her for who she really was, not just the alien everyone else feared? She took a small step back, unsure of what to do. She had been rejected so many times that she wasn't sure how to react when someone actually looked at her like this. The man didn't move, his gaze steady and calm. Lira noticed that he wasn't afraid. He didn't look at her with disgust or fear the way most people did. There was something kind in his eyes, something that made her wonder if she had finally found someone who wouldn't turn away. But Lira knew better. She had been fooled before. People could be kind for a moment, but in the end, they always turned their backs. Yet, As the rain began to fall harder, the man took a small step toward her. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small piece of bread. He offered it to her without saying a word. Lira hesitated. She hadn't eaten in days, but she didn't want to take something from someone who might hurt her. "Are you hungry?" the man finally asked, his voice soft but steady. "I don't have much, but you can have this." Lira's eyes widened. This was the first time anyone had offered her something without asking for anything in return. Her heart fluttered in her chest. She was scared, but something deep inside told her to take the bread. With trembling hands, she reached out and took it from him. The man smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that made Lira feel like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. She ate the bread slowly, her eyes still on him. She didn't know what to say, or if she should say anything at all. Words didn't matter. Anymore, she had been lost for so long that she didn't know how to find her way back. But in this moment, with the rain falling around them and the man standing there offering her food, something inside Lira began to change. Maybe there was a place for her in this world, after all. Maybe this was the beginning of something different. But the moment was fleeting. The man turned to leave, his footsteps echoing in the empty street. Lira stood there, staring after him, unsure of what had just happened. She had felt something stir inside her, hope she hadn't felt in a long time. But was it real? Or was it just another false hope? As the night continued, Lira stayed in the same spot, lost in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. That maybe this time, she hadn't been rejected for the last time. The first encounter the next morning, the city was still shrouded in rain, with the streets filled with a cold mist that blurred the neon lights. Lira sat in an abandoned alley, clutching the crystal in her hand. The bread she had been given the night before had filled her, but it hadn't satisfied the deep hunger in her heart. She still felt alone, still felt unwanted, and the pain of being rejected time and time again weighed heavily on her. As the day passed, she wandered the city once more. She tried to avoid people, knowing that they would only look at her with fear or disgust. She had gotten used to it, but it never got easier. People saw her and immediately assumed she was dangerous, an alien who didn't belong. No one understood her, no one ever had. But as she walked, Lira couldn't shake the memory of the man from last night. His kindness had been so different from what she was used to. She wondered if it had been a mistake. Maybe he didn't see her for who she really was. Maybe he was just feeling pity for her. Or maybe he had an agenda. She couldn't allow herself to believe that there was hope. She had learned the hard way that hope was often the cruelest thing of all. But something about the man's presence lingered in her thoughts. She found herself standing on the same street corner, the one where she had met him. There was no sign of him, just the usual hustle and bustle of the city. People rushed past her, too busy to notice the lonely alien girl standing at the side of the road. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the crowd, and Lira's heart skipped a beat. It was the man. He was walking quickly, scanning the crowd as though searching for something. His eyes met hers, and a brief flicker of recognition passed over his face. This time, he didn't just glance at her and walk away. He stopped. Lira froze, unsure of what to do. She wasn't used to people stopping for her. She wasn't used to kindness. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, to avoid any more pain. But something held her there, something deeper than fear. The man stepped closer, and his gaze softened. He didn't look at her with suspicion or fear. There was no judgment in his eyes, just calm, steady attention. "You're the one from last night, aren't you?" he said, his voice warm, not demanding. "I was hoping I'd find you." Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She had no idea what to say. She had no experience with this kind of situation. The words seemed to escape her. "I'm sorry if I scared you," the man continued, noticing her hesitation. "I didn't mean to. I just ... I couldn't stop thinking about you. You don't have to be alone, you know. Not anymore." Lyra's mind raced. This wasn't like anything she had ever experienced. She had been told she would always be alone, that she wasn't worth anyone's time. But this man, this stranger, was speaking to her as though she mattered. "You don't have to talk," he added, sensing her discomfort. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay. There's no one around here who cares, but I don't want to see you like this." Lira couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man, a human, was offering her something no one else had ever given her choice. A chance to be more than the alien who was rejected by the world. She shook her head slowly, unsure of how to respond. Her voice caught in her throat, and the words felt foreign, like she hadn't spoken in years. "Why?" was all she could manage to say. The man took a deep breath, as if he had been waiting for her question. He looked at her with an almost sad expression. "Because everyone deserves a chance, even you." Lira didn't know what to say to that. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that maybe, just maybe, she could belong somewhere. But the fear of being hurt again, of being abandoned once more, kept her silent. For a moment, the man simply stood there, watching her. His gaze wasn't pitying, but understanding. And somehow, Lira felt a little less afraid. "I'm not asking for anything in return," the man said softly. "I just want to help. If you need someone, I'll be here." Lira swallowed hard. The weight in her chest had lifted just slightly. She didn't know what would happen next, or how long this moment of kindness would last. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely alone. "Why are you doing this?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled, though it was a sad smile. "Because I've seen what happens to people like you. People who have nowhere to go, who are thrown away and forgotten. I don't want that for you. You don't deserve it." Lira felt something stir inside her, a spark of hope. Could it be real this time? Was it possible that someone could see her as more than an alien, more than an outcast? She didn't know the answer, but for the first time, she felt the warmth of a possibility, a chance at something different. She looked at the man, meeting his eyes, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe in the kindness he offered. Maybe I'll take you up on that," Lira said quietly, her voice shaking. The man nodded, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here." As the rain began to fall again, Lira stood there, unsure of what the future held. But for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt before, a small flicker of hope. The promise of help. The days after their encounter passed in a blur. Lira couldn't shake the memory of the man's words. "I'll be here." Those words echoed in her mind every night as she lay awake, wondering if it was all just a fleeting kindness. She had been rejected so many times by so many people that trusting someone felt impossible. But something about him was different. He hadn't asked for anything in return. He hadn't looked at her as if she were a threat or a burden each day. She found herself wandering the same streets, always drawn back to the corner where they first met. It had become a place of strange comfort for her, A reminder that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope for her. Lira hadn't expected to see him again so soon. But as the sun dipped below the horizon one evening, painting the sky with shades of purple and orange, she saw him walking down the street. His figure stood out against the fading light, the dark coat he wore flowing behind him. She paused, her heart quickening. She didn't know why, but seeing him made her feel a mix of hope and fear. She wasn't sure if she was ready to trust again. What if he only wanted to help because he saw her as a project, something to fix? What if she ended up alone again? But as he drew nearer, the doubts faded slightly. His eyes softened when they met hers, and he gave her that same gentle smile. It was the kind of smile that made her feel like she wasn't invisible anymore. "Hello." Again, the man said softly, his voice steady and calm. "I've been looking for you." Lira felt a pang of warmth inside, and though she didn't know how to respond, she managed a small nod. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't look surprised by her words. "I told you I would. You don't have to face this world alone, Lira. You don't have to hide in the shadows." She swallowed hard, her throat tightening as her thoughts swelled. "But I'm not like you," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not like anyone here." "I know," the man said, his expression serious now. "But that doesn't mean you don't deserve kindness. You deserve a chance, just like anyone else." Lira stared at him, trying to make sense of the feelings that had stirred inside her. Was he truly offering her help? Or was this just another temporary kindness that would fade away like all the others? "I'm not sure I can trust you," she admitted, the words feeling heavy on her tongue. "I've been hurt before. I've been sent away before. How do I know you won't do the same?" The man was quiet for a moment, his gaze soft but determined. "I can't promise that things will be easy, but I can promise that I'll always be honest with you. I'll be here, not because I feel sorry for you, but because I believe everyone deserves a chance at a better life, even you." Lira felt her heart thump loudly in her chest. The words were simple, but they struck her in a way she hadn't expected. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that there was still something worth fighting for. But the fear of being abandoned once more, still clung to her like a shadow. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why are you helping me? I'm just an alien. I'm not one of you." The man took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "I see you, Lira. I don't see an alien or a monster. I see a person, someone who's been through too much alone, and that's not right. You deserve more than that." For the first time in a long while, Lira felt something inside her crack open, something she had buried deep inside. It was the faintest spark of hope. Could it be real? Could someone actually see her as more than just an alien? Could she trust him? Lira stared at the man, the doubts swirling in her mind. She wasn't sure, but she knew one thing. She was tired of being alone. She had always been alone. Her entire life had been a series of rejections, but maybe this time was different. "I don't know if I can trust you yet," she said, her voice shaking. "But, maybe I'll try. I don't want to be alone anymore." The man's eyes softened, and for a moment he simply watched her, his gaze full of understanding. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away, but I will be here whenever you're ready." Lira nodded slowly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she had someone who cared. She had someone who saw her for who she was, not for what she wasn't. "Thank you," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. I don't know what this means yet, but ... thank you. The man smiled, a soft, knowing smile. You don't need to thank me, Lira. You're not a burden. You're not alone anymore. And with those words, Lira felt a small shift inside her, a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she felt like she might have a place in this world, a place where she didn't have to hide, a place where she could be seen. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but as she walked beside the man, she allowed herself to hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her after all. The hidden truth Lira had never felt like this before, uncertain, yet strangely hopeful. She had spent her life running, hiding from those who feared her, and avoiding any kind of connection. But now, walking beside the man, her thoughts were different. She didn't know where they were headed, but for once, it didn't matter. The presence of someone who genuinely cared, someone who saw her as more than just an alien, filled her with a warmth she couldn't describe. The man whose name she learned was Marcus led her through narrow streets, the rain softening as they walked under the shelter of a large, overhanging building. The sound of distant traffic, the hum of the city, seemed to fade as she focused on Marcus's calm presence. They arrived at a small apartment building tucked away in an alley. Marcus stopped in front of a door, unlocking it with a key. Lira hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to expect. It was the first time she had ever been invited into someone's home. The idea of being close to another person, especially a human, felt strange. But as the door opened and the warm, dim light of the apartment spilled out, Lira felt a small flicker of hope. Marcus stepped inside first, holding the door open for her. Come on in, he said gently. It's not much, but it's safe. Lira slowly stepped inside, feeling the weight of the world lift just a little. The apartment was simple but cozy. There were no bright flashing lights like outside in the city, just soft calming lights and quiet space. There was a small kitchen. In the corner, a couch and a few chairs around a table. Marcus gestured to the couch. You can sit down. I'll make us something warm to eat. Lira nodded silently, feeling a bit awkward. As she took a seat, her mind raced. It was hard for her to accept kindness, to believe that someone truly wanted to help her. She kept waiting for the catch, the moment when everything would go wrong. But Marcus was right. She wasn't alone anymore. She was here, safe for now, and that was enough. As Marcus went into the kitchen, Lira glanced around the room. It was quiet, peaceful, and far from the harsh, unwelcoming world she had been running from. For the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. She could actually relax. Yet, even as she sat there, Lira couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Marcus's offer. He had been so kind to her, but there had to be something deeper, something more than just his desire to help. An alien girl. Why was he doing this? Why her? Her thoughts were interrupted when Marcus returned, carrying 2 steaming bowls of soup. He set one down in front of her, the aroma filling the air with a comforting warmth. Eat, he said, settling down beside her. I know you probably don't trust me yet, and I understand that. But you're safe here, Lira, I promise. Lira picked up the spoon, staring into the bowl for a moment. She wanted to believe him. She really did, but part of her was still skeptical. She had been burned so many times before. She wasn't sure if she could trust anyone. I don't know why you're helping me, Lira said, her voice quiet. Why? Are you doing this? Why not just walk away? Marcus paused, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. After a long moment, he set his spoon down, his eyes fixed on hers. "Because I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to be rejected, to be cast aside as if you don't matter. I've seen it happen to too many people who are misunderstood or different. You don't deserve to be alone, Lira. You deserve a chance to live without fear, without hiding." Lira felt a pang in her chest at his words. She had never heard anyone speak to her like that before. Everyone else had either ignored her or treated her as a threat. They had feared her, wanted to control her, or worse, sent her away. But Marcus didn't fear her. He saw her as a person who deserved a chance. "I don't know what that feels like," Lira admitted softly. "To not be afraid, to not have to hide. I've spent my whole life running." Marcus's expression softened, and he reached out, placing a hand on hers. It was a simple gesture, but it made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time safe. "You don't have to run anymore," he said quietly. "Not with me." Lira looked down at their hands, her heart racing. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe his words. Maybe this was real. Maybe she didn't have to hide anymore. But then her thoughts turned darker. "What if they come after me?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. "What if someone finds me? I don't know if I can keep running. I don't know how long I can hide." Marcus sighed, his grip tightening round her hand. "I can't promise that no one will ever find you. But what I can promise is that I will do everything I can to protect you. You don't have to face this alone. We'll figure it out together." Lira's heart swelled with emotion at his words. She had never imagined that anyone could say those things to her, let alone mean them. For the first time, she didn't feel like a burden. She didn't feel like an outcast. She felt like she belonged, like there was hope for her after all. As the night wore on, they talked more about her past, about the places she had been, and about the future. It wasn't easy for Lira to open up, but with Marcus, it felt different. It felt safe, and though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. For the first time in her life, Lira didn't have to face it alone. The chase, the days that followed, felt like a strange mix of peace and tension. Lira had settled into Marcus's small apartment, the quiet space a welcome change from the constant uncertainty of the outside world. Every morning, Marcus would leave for work, and every evening he would return, always with a kind word or a warm meal for her. For the first time in a long time, Lira felt something she hadn't felt in years: stability. Yet, despite the calm, there was a nagging worry that lingered in her mind. It was the kind of worry that couldn't be shaken, no matter how hard she tried to ignore it. What if the people who had rejected her, who had feared her, were still looking for her? What if they hadn't forgotten about the alien girl who was cast aside, left to wander alone in the universe? The more time Lira spent with Marcus, the more she realized that she couldn't hide forever. Her past, her true identity, was something she couldn't outrun. And if she stayed with him for too long, someone might eventually find her. It was late one evening when the inevitable happened. Lira had just finished a quiet dinner, the sound of the rain against the window her only company, when the door to the apartment suddenly burst open. Marcus froze in the doorway, his expression pale, his eyes wide with alarm. "Lira, get back," he shouted, his voice low and urgent. Before she could react, he grabbed her arm and pulled her away from the door, his grip tight and protective. Lira's heart skipped a beat. What was happening? "Who's here?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Someone. Who shouldn't be, Marcus replied, his voice steady but strained. Stay quiet, stay hidden. Panic surged through Lira's chest. She didn't need to ask who it was. It could only be one of two people, those who had been hunting her for so long, the ones who saw her as nothing more than a weapon. Lira's heart raced. She had known this moment would come, but she hadn't been ready for it. She had hoped that maybe, just maybe, her past could stay buried, that she could find a place where she wouldn't have to run anymore. But that dream was fading fast. The sound of heavy boots echoed outside the door, followed by muffled voices. Lira's mind raced. Should she hide? Should she run? There was nowhere to go. She could feel her powers stirring within her, but she wasn't sure if they could protect her or anyone else. For that matter, the door rattled as someone knocked. Sharply, Lira's stomach turned. It was them. They had found her. Open up. A voice barked from the other side. We know you're in there, alien. You can't hide forever. Lira's breath hitched. She had heard their voices before, and they brought back memories she had tried so hard to forget. The last time she had encountered them, they had nearly killed her. They wouldn't hesitate to do it again. Marcus didn't flinch. He looked down at Lira, his face full of determination. Stay here, he said in a low voice. I'll handle this. No, Marcus. Lira gasped, grabbing his arm. They'll kill you. Please don't, Lira, Marcus said softly, his voice steady, despite the tension in the air. I'm not going to let them hurt you, trust me. He gave her a reassuring squeeze before moving toward the door, his hand hovering over the handle. Lira's heart pounded in her chest as she watched him, torn between staying hidden and running to protect him. But there was no time to think. The door creaked as Marcus opened it, revealing the two figures standing in the hallway. The two men on the other side were tall, imposing, and dressed in dark, military-style uniforms. Their eyes were cold and calculating as they sized up Marcus. Well, one of them sneered. Looks like we've found the little alien's protector. Marcus stood tall, his posture rigid and confident. She's not going anywhere with you, he said firmly. Leave now, before this gets ugly. The men exchanged a glance, smirking. You're in no position to make demands, the second man growled. We've been sent to retrieve her. And you, he pointed at Marcus, are in our way. Lira's breath caught in her throat. She could feel the energy building inside her, the power she had always feared. She wanted to fight, to protect Marcus, but she didn't know how to control it. What if it made everything worse? Marcus, Lira called out, stepping forward from the shadows. Her voice was trembling, but she couldn't keep silent any longer. Please, don't let them take me. The men turned toward her, their expressions darkening. Ah, there she is. The little alien, the first man said, his tone mocking. You really think this human can protect you? Lira's heart raced as she faced the two men. She could feel the weight of their gaze, their judgment. They saw her as a threat, a tool to be used and discarded. But Marcus wasn't backing down. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway, his eyes locked onto the men. I won't let you hurt her. You'll have to go through me. The second man's eyes narrowed. Very well then, he said, his voice dripping with venom. You've made your choice. Before Marcus could react, one of the men lunged toward him, reaching for a weapon at his side. In that instant, something inside Lira snapped. Her crystal glowed brightly in her pocket, a surge of energy pulsing through her. No. Lira shouted, stepping between the two men and Marcus. Her body trembled as the power inside her erupted. A bright light flashed from her crystal, sending the two men stumbling back in shock. The force of the blast threw them off their feet, knocking them against the wall with a loud crash. Lira gasped, her hands shaking. She hadn't meant to do that. She had never wanted to hurt anyone, but she had just saved Marcus. He stood frozen behind her, his face a mixture of awe and fear. Lira. Lira turned to him, her eyes wide with terror. I didn't mean to. I didn't know I could. Marcus stepped forward, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. It's okay, Lira. You're safe now. We're both safe. The two men groaned as they began to get back on their feet, but they quickly realized that they were no match for the power Lira had just shown. Without a word, they turned and fled down the hallway, disappearing into the shadows of the city. Lira stood there, breathing heavily, her body still tingling with the residual energy. She looked at Marcus, unsure of what just happened. She had never felt anything like that before. You did it, Marcus said softly, his voice full of awe. You protected us. Lira's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't meant to hurt anyone, but in that moment, she realized that she wasn't helpless. She wasn't a burden. She had the power to protect herself and those she cared about. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't know I could do that. Marcus smiled, his hand still resting on her shoulder. I knew you had it in you. For the first time, Lira felt like she wasn't just running away. She was standing her ground. And for once, she wasn't alone. The final choice the days following the confrontation were quiet, too quiet. Lira found herself back in Marcus's apartment, but the calm she had once cherished now felt uneasy. Her mind raced with the events that had just unfolded. The power she had unleashed, the fear she had seen in the eyes of the men who tried to take her. She had done it to protect Marcus, but she didn't understand it fully. She didn't know what to do with the strength inside her. Marcus had been quiet after the attack. He didn't treat her any differently, but Lira could see the uncertainty in his eyes. He was protective, but she could sense his growing concern about what had just happened. The power she wielded wasn't something they could ignore. One evening, as the rain continued to fall in heavy sheets outside, Marcus sat down beside her at the kitchen table. His face was serious, but his eyes remained gentle. We need to talk, he said softly. Lira's stomach tightened. She had a feeling this conversation was coming, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. The last few days had been full of confusion, hope, and fear. The power she had felt surge inside her was both a gift and a curse. It was a part of her she had been running from for so long, and now it had caught up with her. I know, Lira replied quietly. What's going to happen now? Marcus exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, ... about how you're always on the run, about how you don't know how to control what's inside you. He paused, his gaze meeting hers. Lira, I can't pretend that everything's going to be okay if we keep going like this. I can't protect you forever. The people who are after you, they'll come back. And the truth is, if they find us again, it could be dangerous for both of us. Lira looked down at her hands, unsure of how to respond. She knew Marcus was right. The men who had come for her weren't just any ordinary people. They were part of a larger network, one that wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. She had always known that she couldn't hide forever. I don't want to hurt anyone, she whispered, her voice breaking, but I don't know how to stop it. Marcus's expression softened. I know you don't want to hurt anyone, Lira, but you've already shown me that you have the strength to defend yourself, to protect what matters. But you also need to make a choice. You need to decide if you're going to run again, or if you're going to stand and fight. The words hung in the air between them. Lyra's heart pounded. She had never considered standing her ground, not for long. Every time she tried to belong somewhere, to be accepted, she was rejected. Every time she thought she had found safety, it was ripped away. The thought of staying and fighting terrified her. But running again, it was starting to feel like she couldn't do that anymore. She couldn't keep running, hiding in the shadows, forever. What do you mean, stand and fight? Lira asked, her voice trembling. How can I fight them? I'm just one alien girl. Marcus leaned forward, his tone serious but kind. You're more than that. You've already proven that. You don't have to fight alone. We can find a way. We can fight for something better, for a future where you don't have to hide anymore. Lira looked out the window, the rain now falling in sheets, blurring the city lights in the distance. She had always been afraid of the world, afraid of the powers inside her. But with Marcus by her side, something began to change inside her. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to stop letting fear control her life. I don't know if I'm ready to fight, Lira said softly. But I don't want to run anymore. Marcus smiled, a warmth in his eyes. You don't have to be ready right now. We'll figure it out together. But if you choose to stand and fight, you'll have people by your side. You won't have to do this alone. Lyra's heart swelled with a mix of fear and hope. The idea of fighting was terrifying, but it wasn't as scary as the thought of running forever, of always feeling like she didn't belong. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll fight. Marcus's expression softened, and he reached out, taking her hand. We'll do this together. Lyra's mind was still filled with uncertainty, but in that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Courage. She didn't know how to control the power inside her, but with Marcus's help, maybe she could learn. Maybe she could stand tall for the first time, not as someone who was rejected or feared, but as someone who had the strength to protect the things that mattered. Thank you, Lira whispered, her voice full of emotion, for not giving up on me. Marcus smiled, squeezing her hand. You don't have to thank me, Lira. I'm not giving up on you because I believe in you. I always have. The rain outside began to subside, leaving behind a quiet stillness. Lira felt a sense of calm wash over her, knowing that, for once, she wasn't alone, and that, perhaps, was the beginning of something she never thought, possibly a future where she could fight. For herself and for the people she cared about. A new home the following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Marcus and Lira spent hours talking, planning, and learning from each other. Lira had never known how to control the power inside her, but Marcus patiently helped her practice. She learned to focus, to channel her energy, and to use her abilities for protection rather than fear. Every step was hard, and every mistake felt like a failure, but Marcus never gave up on her. With every moment of doubt, he reminded her that she wasn't alone anymore. And slowly, Lira began to believe him, despite the progress they were making. The looming threat of the enemy hung over them like a dark cloud. Lira knew they couldn't stay in the apartment forever. The men who had chased her down before would eventually come looking again, and this time they would be more prepared. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about finding a place where she could belong, where she could live without fear. One afternoon, After a long training session, Marcus pulled Lira aside. His expression was serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low. "Maybe it's time we stop running and start living." Lira tilted her head, unsure of where he was going with this. "What do you mean?" Marcus took a deep breath. "There's a place I've been thinking about. A small town, away from the chaos of the city. It's quiet, peaceful. It's not much, but it could be a place where you're safe. A place where we can start fresh." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "Start fresh," she repeated softly. She had always wanted to escape, to find somewhere she could just be herself. But the idea of leaving everything behind, leaving the city, leaving the world she had always known, was both exciting and terrifying. "I know it's a big step," Marcus continued, "but I can't keep you hidden forever, Lira. And I know you're tired of running. We can't fight forever, but we can find a place where you don't have to hide anymore, where you can live, not just survive." Lira felt her chest tighten with emotion. The idea of a new life, a life where she wasn't an outcast, was something she had longed for her entire existence. But she couldn't shake the fear of what might happen if they were found. What if they couldn't keep her safe? "I'm scared," Lira admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if they find me again? What if we can't keep running?" Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his eyes filled with unwavering confidence. "We'll make it work, Lira. Together. You don't have to be afraid anymore, and I'll be with you every step of the way. We'll make this new life your home." Lira felt tears welling up in her eyes. The idea of a home, of truly belonging somewhere, was something she had never experienced before. The thought that Marcus, someone who didn't even know her past, was willing to help her build a futurette was overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've never had a place to call home. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere." Marcus smiled gently, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "You belong with me, and together we'll find a place where you can finally be who you are. No more hiding, no more fear." Lira looked up at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and hope. For the first time, she felt like there was a future ahead of her future where she didn't have to hide, where she could be free. That evening, Marcus packed a small bag with the essentials. He had made arrangements to leave the city as quietly as possible. It was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking. Lira stood by the window, watching as the rain finally stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the soft light of the street lamps. It felt like a sign. The storm had passed, and now it was time to move forward. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, standing behind her. Lira turned to face him, her heart full of determination. She had made her choice. She wasn't going to run anymore. She wasn't going to hide. For the first time, she was ready to embrace the future. "Yes," she said quietly, but firmly. "I'm ready." With that, they left the apartment, walking into the night with a sense of purpose. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, Lira wasn't afraid. She had found someone who believed in her, someone who cared about her, and together they were going to build a new life, a life where she could be free, a life where she could finally feel at home.